And that segues very nicely into a question for each of you before we go to the floor, because we have talked about optimism, and you also mentioned almost in the same breath at the beginning, Helen, about the diminishing civic power. So my question for Kevin, which you can think about while you answer your question, Helen, my question for Kevin is, what can ordinary people without decision-making power do in tangible ways to contribute to building a more peaceful world? While you're thinking about that, I am going to go off script again because I need to ask this as a woman MP, and I know that Helen has an interest in this. We have seen throughout many of these conflicts a disproportionate impact on women and the disempowering of women very deliberately, which our Iranian solidarity friends have actually described as gender apartheid. How significant is that in your view, Helen, and what is that doing to create this polarization that the world is experiencing? So I'll start with you first and then I'll go to Kevin.
Well, I think one of the things we need to do is to make sure that we do not succumb to pessimism and to gloom and to despondency, to acknowledge that, we do have capacity and power, and has been demonstrated in the past. I mean, as Helen's already mentioned in relation to the anti-nuclear movement, I mean, people were gathering in homes all around the country and local government arenas and things. And so if we have clear objectives, it seems to me there's absolutely no reason why we can't kind of build new coalitions. The challenge is that, the internet and our devices and everything are generating a passive audience to everything. We are bystanders that are watching what's happening before our eyes. And we have to move out of that frame of mind in order to become focused on how we can become proactive, less paralyzed human beings in a world which is intent on paralyzing us. And so it seems to me that's, that we haven't discussed the media, but the media is a narcotic. I mean, forget religion being the opium of the people. I mean, the media is tranquilizing all of us, I think, to some extent, to just, share the perspectives that are given to us rather than have us create new orientations, new perspectives, and new visions.
Thank you. And your question, Helen?
Yes, I mean, we definitely need more women leaders in the world, which is not to say that every woman leader is an angel either. Definitely not every woman leader is an angel of peace, but by and large, I think women leaders are more inclined to be looking for a way forward that's based on dialogue and bringing people together than splitting them apart. This leads me to say something on the Women, Peace and Security agenda, also a Security Council resolution of, I think, close to 25 years ago now.
Yeah, 1325, yeah.
Yeah, 1325, and I did go to 2 events on this in New York in the last couple of weeks, talking about what's been achieved and what hasn't. And the reality is, whenever you look at some sort of talks between parties in conflict, how often are you seeing women on the front row? Yeah. You're not. You're not seeing them there at all. And I did observe at both of the events I spoke at that it is deplorable that the UN brought together special envoys on Afghanistan together with the Taliban in Doha in June and did not require that Afghan women were present. So if it's not upholding its own resolutions, how can it expect anyone else to? This is not on. I mean, the most severe gender apartheid in the world is practiced in Afghanistan, as we see on a daily basis. I think you also mentioned Iran, Ingrid, and I've retweeted again this morning about the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, a woman in Iran, who's Nargis Mohammed, I think, who's been detained unjustly as a political prisoner, denied access to proper medical treatment, obviously badly treated. I mean, if this can happen to a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, how can I imagine what's happening to those who have no profile at all? So there's a lot to be done on the women, peace and security agenda, and defending those women and men who are human rights defenders who are brave enough to stand up and lead.
Thank you. We'll go to some questions from the floor. Have we got a roving microphone? We do. So if you can just put your hand up, we'll take one in the front row here. And if you can just say your name and or organisation as you preface your question, just in the front row over here. Thank you. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind standing up.
Kia ora, thank you very much. My name is Liz Ream as well. I'm from Te Mata a Maui, Hawke's Bay, and I'm Vice President of World Beyond War. And wonderful presentation, thank you so much. My question is around fear and security. And if we have been sort of trained to think that the bosom of the United States is going to take care of us, and we're under pressure from NATO to increase our military spending to 2%. I think we're up about 1.5% at the moment, and which is actually greater than the total of Ministry of Police, Justice, Oranga Tamariki and Conservation. How do we actually get our people to pressure the government to put our spending towards the things that really we need, like climate change, infrastructure, health, education, te reo Māori, etc.? Thank you.
Thank you. Helen.
Well, first question to ask is, what would this money be spent on? You know, what is so important that you increase to 2% when you can't fund your hospitals, your schools, your disability benefits and numerous other things? When you look at AUKUS Pillar 2 and what it's, quote, exploring, is access to hypersonic weapons, yes, artificial intelligence and warfare, offensive cyber capacities. I mean, really? Against who? And we all know who it's aimed at. I reflect on, you know, the difference in tone from my years as PM, where in the Asia Pacific, APEC was probably at its height. You had quite a good dialogue across the Pacific between China and the US. With respect to China and New Zealand, it was seen as opportunity. We registered differences where we had them, but there was a lot that you could, you know, get on and do. And now we're being told to suddenly fear those who are part of, you know, ensuring our prosperity. So something has gone radically wrong. I think it's also important to recognise that even when the ANZUS Treaty was operational, and you've got to go back to the mid-1980s and the Muldoon era for that, it never had a binding security commitment from the United States, right? It was, all it provided was for consultation in the event of a threat. Well, that ain't a binding security guarantee. Yeah. No one's coming to save New Zealand, but who exactly is threatening us? Who exactly is threatening us? I think we just have to overcome the fear, as we did when, you know, operationally we were ejected from ANZUS and it faded from the public consciousness until revived in a ministerial statement in February out of NZ ministers' meetings, that we can make our own luck. We don't have enemies here. And we should be a voice for a different sort of world, not for buying into the fear about our security.
Well, and my comment on that would be that, you know, there's far too much negative othering in our political system at the moment. You know, we're not acknowledging each other's, you know, individuality, humanity, and so forth. And I think that negative othering is resulting in the deeper polarization, but it also makes us very susceptible to, to kind of fearful comments by our political leaders. But the politics of fear is also very paralyzing. I mean, you know, we will only be able to be self-actualized individuals and a self-actualized nation if we transcend that and say, you know, we have capacity here to deal with all of the challenges that are likely to come our way.
So what I'm hearing on that, in the words of David Longy, is we need to stop and have a cup of tea. Any other questions? Yes, we have one here.
Kia ora. My name is Somya. I'm from the SJNZ. I'm one of the youth representatives there, and I have firstly, thank you so much for a great dialogue where I've learned a lot and really expanded my awareness on the various different dynamics, and it's definitely feeling very, very turbulent out there. My question is more at the grassroots level and inspired from today's theme with a small twist. From the perspective of a young man or a young woman in Aotearoa, New Zealand, how could we create peace in these turbulent times so that it ripple out as waves of peace into the rest of the world? Thank you.
Well, you might start by thinking about it at home and what's happening to us as a society. As you know, the politics of division bites. I mean, you know, you'd have to be completely insensitive not to see the threat that Maoridom feels under at the moment. You know, there's an assault on many levels to try to divide people. There's that kind of division that comes when you begin to attack people who need the support of the state for whatever reason, hard on their luck. Who was it who said that society will be judged by the way it treats its old, its young, its sick, and its poor? Would we want to be judged right now? Or are we leaving people behind, swathes of people behind? So peace starts with, I think, a commitment to building a socially cohesive society where everybody, regardless of who they are, what their background is, their ethnicity, indigeneity, religion, faith, that they feel they are part of this country, and that being a New Zealander means you embrace that diversity and you listen to each other and you have a tolerance of and respect for each other. If you can stand tall like that as a society, you've got a chance of going out to the world and saying, we stand for something better than what we see out here. We need people to come together and reconcile their differences. And here's what we're trying to do. And in a way, we've been able to do that in the past. We've been able to say, we've got processes going here. Those processes are under a lot of strain.
Yeah. And I don't think we should be afraid of declaring that the welfare state actually was probably one of the best inventions ever devised by human beings, and to have it eroded and undermined and challenged as is happening at the moment, I think is a scandal. So, I mean, the welfare state was womb-to-tomb security. It may have had its downsides. There may have been accusations of being a nanny state, but people were fed, unemployment was low, everybody had access to education and health. The Ministry of Works was able to get on with the job of building hospitals, and the electricity department made sure that nobody had electrical failures. I mean, so there's no reason why we can't in New Zealand say, let's revive a kind of a welfare state for the 21st century in which everybody has a place and everybody is able to realize their full potentiality.
I felt myself wince when you said hospital, being from Dunedin, and I saw Rachel Boyack from Nelson wincing as well. Do we have one final question before we go to our closing? Yes. Just down. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Do apologise.
My name is Apurva. I'm a member of SGINZ, and I've also had the privilege of studying under Kevin at the National Centre for Peace and Conflict Studies. So nice to see you again. Helen, you mentioned that the power of the United Nations is diminishing. And I just wondered, as a member of the elders, how can we actually foster capable successors? How do we foster the next generation of peace negotiators? There isn't a lot of money in the peacemaking business, as we know, but how do we actually encourage next generation to take up that mantle of peace? Thank you.
Well, the world needs better leaders, doesn't it? Sort of across the board. I mean, it's a pretty dismal pick at the moment, by and large, with a few obvious exceptions. And so I really go back to where I began, that we have to have hope that coming out of civil society there will be pressures for something different. Civil society leadership has never mattered more, particularly when it's lacking at the national level. And while I think Kevin had a bit of a clip, and rightly so, at media in its different forms, social media can be a tremendous power for good and for connecting good ideas. And the world's nascent peace builders and people interested in these kinds of issues need to be getting together and sort of strategizing on ways forward. And the centres like the one that Kevin was the founding director of, need to be encouraged for what they can do to open young New Zealanders' eyes to the possibility for being a positive force for peace and diplomacy. Whether the economics of our universities allow for these sort of things these days, heaven knows, but it's very, very badly needed. But all I can do is, encourage the great organisations out there that are interested in peace and dialogue. I see Karen Dickey and others here from the UN Association. Good on you. And we can't give up on the multilateral institutions. It's all we've got, right? Yeah. And they still manage to convene. The Pact for the Future mightn't be much, but a lot of leaders converge on New York. It is a place where people at least can exchange views. There is a strong body of international law, more on it in the breach than the observance, but the normative framework is there. The institutions are there, and it's a question of how we can build fresh life into them, breathe fresh life into them, to make them more effective going forward.
Also, I think that the other thing that we have to be aware about, in addition to kind of defending and promoting the welfare state for the 21st century, we have to really begin engaging the whole question of preserving and protecting democracy. Democracy is under huge threat all around the world at the moment. 74% of the world's populations live under autocracies, either elected or taken. And so, the whole democratic project is in a minority position at the moment, which I think is really dangerous in terms of civil society, in terms of cohesive systems, in terms of right relationships between states and peoples. And so it seems to me that we really need to kind of ask ourselves, are our democratic institutions functioning properly? What do we need to do about them, and how do we defend them? And how do we make sure we have civil society actors and organizations who are able to hold our leaders to account?